Hey guys, today I'm doing a Dell Inspiron 7791 with a bad DC jack. We do these repairs for $69 parts and labor at PCRepairHelp.net. And this 7791 came in with a really loose connection where you plug in the power cord. It just kind of flops out when you apply any force to it. It should be nice and snug and kind of snap into place there, and you can just feel that it's obviously loose when you're plugging and unplugging, when that connection should feel solid. And there's a little light on the side that doesn't come on at all, and I couldn't get the computer to power up in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and take this thing apart and replace that internal jack. And the first step is to remove the large bottom panel. And this is held in by 12 screws, and the first 3 that I'm removing here don't actually come out of the bottom panel. You just unscrew them until they're loose, but they actually will stay in the bottom panel. Then the next 8 are actually going to come out. So once you remove these 8 screws, you can start to pry up that bottom panel and remove it. And I use my pry tool of choice for a laptop like this one is just a guitar pick, a pretty thin one. That layer in between the bottom panel and the chassis is really thin, so using a thin pry tool is what you're going to need for this one. A larger pry tool wouldn't really fit in between that bottom panel and the computer. And I just switched to a different one. Once you get it worked up, you can use a slightly larger one too to help out. And I just missed a screw there, it seems. But once I used that little thin red one, I was able to switch over to the blue one, which helps pop it up a little bit easier. And once you go around it, that bottom panel will come right off. And the next step for this one is to remove a couple screws that are holding the hinge into place. That hinge is covering the DC jack, so I'm going to need to remove these screws so I can push up on that hinge. And once the hinge is up, you have better access to the DC jack. And this DC jack is held in by a single screw, so you want to remove that screw, and then that'll have the jack being able to pry it up here. And so you just want to unroute that jack, and you can unplug it from the board. And there's no real physical signs of damage on this one. Sometimes I see that little plastic barrel has been completely broken or destroyed by some kind of force, but this one looked okay, but it just plugged in very loose. And there's the other side of the cable connector that plugs into the board. And so now putting the new one on here, you just want to put it back in there and route it properly. And you definitely want to make sure that it's routed in the little grooves properly so that hinge doesn't come down on it and pinch it or something like that. And so now I'm just putting back that single screw that holds the jack. I'm just making sure that cable is nice and routed properly in there. And then you can push that hinge back down and put those 2 screws back in that were holding it into place. Make sure, like I'm doing right here, just make sure you don't have that jack cable pinched. So this is a pretty easy one. Some of them are quite a bit more intricate, but this 7791 is just simply removing that bottom panel, getting the hinge up and replacing the jack. And so I'm just popping that bottom panel back on. Make sure you go around all the edges there to make sure it's evenly secured. And you can start screwing those bottom screws back in. And now that all the screws are back in, I'm going to plug this thing in. Get a much tighter connection there when you plug it back in. And you'll see the charge light come on. There it is. So now we have a good connection. Before, that light wasn't coming on at all. So now we know we're getting power to the laptop. And now it's powering up. So it just simply needed that jack replaced to get this thing back up and running again. If the video helped, give it a like, subscribe, and if you have any trouble, you can go to the website and ask us questions, or we do these repair services as well for $69 parts and labor on these Dell laptops. Thanks so much for watching.